Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Adoptions from the Heart TV. I'm your host, Amanda Aliberti. Today, we are very excited to welcome Theo and Alex, who recently built their family through adoption. So welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda.
Can you guys start from the beginning of when you decided to choose the route of adoption to build your family and what it meant for you in choosing the right agency?
We started thinking about adoption when we were dating. We took a class called Maybe Baby for LGBTQ families, and that solidified our decision. A few years later, as we were looking at agencies, there's so many, characteristics, when you're looking at websites and calling to get information about how an agency functions. And there are so many moving pieces in the adoption triad and so many unknowns from the birth, the adoptive family side that, I think as we were talking to different agencies, that's when we found we learned the most, when we had that first phone call, maybe a second phone call. And with Adoptions from the Heart, it was just clear and transparent how things worked. We really liked how things worked on the birth family side. We felt we got a lot of information about that specific pillar of your organization, and others just didn't quite compare. So it was a pretty easy choice for us in the end.
And how about for you, Theo? What particularly stood out for you in Adoptions from the Heart, and why you knew that this was the right foundation as you guys were embarking on this really big decision of building your family? Because I think some folks don't really think about that part. It's like, okay, we're going to build our family, we need a baby, but they don't think about the idea of making sure you're working with folks who have the experience and the values of open adoption.
We had heard about Adoptions from the Heart from our closest friends who actually who married us, and they adopted through Adoptions from the Heart. So we already had a foundation to work upon, and then they connected us with another couple who adopted through AFTH. So we had some knowledge about the organization, and yet we still went through, I would say, a dozen organizations and agencies across the country. Actually, we were on the East Coast, we went all the way to the West Coast, and we kind of kept circling back to AFTH. There was something about the organization that kept us drawing back into its orbit. And I think part of it was the regional, the fact that it was closer to home, and that to us also made it possible to make sure that we are close to the birth family and have that option. So I think in the end, being closer regionally was central to choosing AFTH.
That's a really important point, because I don't know if people really think about that. You're on board with open adoption, but then what is the future going to look like when you have your yearly visits? Are you going to be able to travel to the state that the birth parent is from? And making sure you're a little more local can be helpful. And then simultaneously, it's nice to know that the agency you're choosing is local. So we're providing local services to adoptive parents as well as birth parents. So we're on the ground, going to the hospital, counseling face-to-face with our clients, which is really valuable in the bigger picture of what we do. So I wanted to kind of jump into your experience before you were placed, because adoption is not all sunshine and rainbows, I like to say. There are definitely ups and downs, and the wait time can be really hard for families. It's like you apply, you go through the home study stage, the education, you gear up to create your profile, and then you become active. But during that wait, it can be very challenging. So I'm hoping you guys can talk a little bit about your experience, because people should know that. They should know the tougher times that you went through and what helped you get through it.
Yeah, we waited 2.5 years. And on day one after signing up, we thought, okay, it might happen tomorrow or in 4 weeks or in 2 months. And I think each year that passed, we checked in, with you, Amanda, with the staff at AFTH. We checked in with each other constantly to think about what, if anything, we felt needed to change. Although needed to change is kind of a weird word, because you do so much work up front deciding what you're comfortable with and what is the right fit for the family that you envision. So we, in the end, made changes, but not a whole lot. And we usually circled back on the decision just to keep waiting. I think, I know the thing that we did, because we like to take trips, and we knew that that would become different with a baby and a child. We tried to take a big trip every year around the time that we had signed up, so that we had that opportunity, you know, to take advantage of the time that we had, even though it felt like we wanted something else for ourselves during that time. I don't know what would you add?
I would say be firm with your decision to want to adopt, because there are a lot of ups and downs, and there are also challenges on an individual level and also as a couple level, because it forces us into conversations that normally we wouldn't have if this was a 4-week wait versus a 2.5-year wait. And the conversations become more complicated, more challenging. The relationship, I think, gets tested in ways that the longer the wait, the more different kinds of conversations open up. So people sometimes say when the baby is in your arms and all has been settled and done, it feels like this never happened. And we are still early on into our adoption. It's been just 5 months, but it is a part of our life leading up to the adoption that it's just there. And I don't think nothing's going to replace that. We're very happy where we are with our adoption, but to get to it, I think it's a step that is deeply unique to each individual, to each couple, and that is something that is part of the process. And whether you are adopting a child, whether you're having a child of your own, everyone has a journey, and I think it's recognizing that every person and every couple has a unique journey. This is just the basic fact of enlarging your family.
Yeah. I mean, that's really well said, Theo, because it's hard to sometimes articulate the feelings associated with the wait period. And I appreciate you saying that everyone has their own journey with it. And once you're placed, that doesn't necessarily discredit the wait period that you went through. I remember as your social worker having meetings with you guys, and I always felt, what's the right word? Like, I don't want to say bad, but I felt like I couldn't give you more, because everything you were saying was so valid, and we would have great conversations. And I do want to point out the importance of checking in with your agency, checking in with your social worker, even if it's once a month. Hop on a Zoom call, come into the office, like engage with the agency, because it will help you to know what's going on. But I really remember with you guys, me feeling like I wasn't giving enough, right? And we would have great conversations, but it's almost like there are times where everyone loses a little bit of hope. And that's just the reality of it. And I say that to be honest, right? Like, we're in this, we're going to get through it. We just got to keep going. But there are little moments of people feeling sad and feeling frustrated and like, why can't this just happen? There's nothing else that has to be changed. My profile's good. My profile key is where we want it to be. There's nothing else that you can control to change. It's just a matter of taking this leap of faith that's just not happening yet. So I really want to emphasize that today for people to hear, because you're valid in how you're feeling of being frustrated or sad or worried. Is it going to happen for us? Are we going to become parents, or am I going to become a parent? So I appreciate both of you in voicing that part, because it's a big part of the journey in adopting. So fast forward to you getting the call and you experiencing, what we had been preparing for years. Talk to us about what it was like to go to the hospital, meet your child, meet the birth parent involved, and the open adoption that you are starting to build.
Yeah, we got the call when each one of us was in a different place. Alex was at work, I was at the grocery store, and we had the phone call with Amanda. And 24 hours later, even less than that, we were at the hospital, which was about 4 hours away driving from where we are based. We got to meet with the birth mom's social worker, and that conversation in some way was technical because we had been thinking and preparing for this meeting for years, perhaps even for over a lifetime. And it was, in a way, exciting, and it's difficult to contain some of those emotions. And when we walked into the room with the birth mom and our son, it was an emotional moment for everyone. And I think the difficulty that we faced was, this is a new experience for everyone. How do you navigate some of this unknown terrain? And it's challenging, but you just ask the question that you want to ask, and trying to make sure that everyone feels as comfortable as they can under the circumstances.
Yeah, that's a really nice way to say it. I think for us, we went from this day-to-day, do we have what we need? Are we ready? Logistics, how are we going to get there? What's the match going to be like? What are the specific details of the whole history, to like instantly you're thinking about the long term once you're there in the room, you know, like what does this look like in a couple of years, you know? And that was a really special moment, I think. The day-to-day doesn't ever quite go away. I mean, we didn't sleep for 72 hours really that well, but it was great. The drive to the birth hospital, the meeting with our social worker who was on the ground there meeting birth mom. I'm sure we'll talk about the rest and keeping in touch and stuff, but all of that was really just unforgettable for us. And I think it was because we were thinking about, you know, the next chapter for everybody, and that was really exciting.
Well, and I remember talking to you guys, I don't know if it was that night or the next day, and I could just sense relief on your end after you had met not just your son, but the birth mom. And I don't know if that ties into all the anxiety that builds up to get to that point, and like the logistics of obviously getting all your baby items and driving to where you have to be. But then it's like you see this baby, you meet this birth parent who clearly is one of the most selfless individuals in the world, and you hug her, and like I could just feel through the phone you guys feeling relief and peace, and it was calm, and I felt like you knew in your hearts like this was the right thing, and even though you were still getting to know each other and there's a little bit of nerves involved with that, I could just feel the calmness through the phone call. Talk to me about that.
I think it was birth mom's trust that came through immediately, and that was because this person had been through medical complications and it had not been a straightforward delivery. Even if it had been, that stress on your whole entire life, you know, when we're walking in the room, we don't know how that interaction is going to be right off the bat, because one of us has gone through this massive physical and emotional life-changing experience, and for us it's the same, but just on the other side of the mirror, way different. You know, the day before that we were at work, we had no idea what was brewing. So I guess in those first moments you just don't know how that sense of trust is going to convey, if you know you're going to walk in the room and feel, I don't know, how do you say it, like feel like this is the match you've been waiting for all this time, or if you're going to feel like there's something that you were expecting that's not there, even though you don't know what to expect. And I think we just walked in the room and it was so clear that birth mom trusted us and that this was the right match for us. You know, that was where the relief came from, at least for me. The, you know, additional to that, birth mom's willingness to keep in touch with us pretty much right away was a big relief, knowing that we had her backing, not just in the match, but also in her willingness to be in touch and know what's happening in our house later, and to know that we had support from the social work staff in navigating that relationship too. I think that was a big source of relief, at least for me.
I think what I realized is, for someone like me, whose personality is very much driven by sort of more controlling, making sure that I have control over everything, that that I execute every single task, knowing what I'm doing. The process of adoption, all the way through, and even now, makes me realize that there are many forces outside of my own sphere of making things happen that I just cannot control. And walking into that adoption, into the delivery room or post-delivery room, meeting the birth mom, and that realization that there are just forces at play that I cannot explain that are happening, and they're impacting our lives, and you reach a juncture point in your life where all these forces that are in somebody else's life and in our lives, and they're kind of get intertwined, and that's just kind of inexplicable in some way. And I don't think the birth mom, any birth mom, they're making this decision. It's difficult for everyone, but ultimately there are forces that are just out there, I think, that really cannot explain and rationalize this process.
That's so true, Theo. And even for us as an agency, you remember back in like your first open adoption ed course, right? And we're talking about the idea of control and letting go and recognizing that this is a process. There's only so much too that you can say and prepare and educate until you're in it. And like, it almost seems like for you, like probably walking through those hospital hallways and recognizing what was happening, it's like you have to be in it to truly get it. So I guess sometimes the learning lesson or the takeaway for families who may be watching this that are gearing up to hopefully be in the same position as you one day is like, have the ability to be flexible and have your heart be open. Mm-hmm. Because it is hard. I'm the same way as you. Like, I'm more of a controlling type of person, and I like to make sure I prepare as much as I can. But in these cases, like, there's only so much that you can do. And even the relationship with a birth parent to a social worker starts with trust, right? You talk about trust between a birth parent and an adopted parent, but also that first initial social worker meeting an expecting mom or a birth parent who just delivered, there has to be trust for us to be able to help, truly help, right? So I think you hit on a good topic of trust is all around within the adoption triad. In talking about trust, talk to us about meeting your birth parent at the AFTH picnic a few months later and what that meant for you. For those who don't know, Adoptions from the Heart does have an annual picnic for each of our office locations. It's a great opportunity to meet your birth parent. There's AFTH staff present. It's a beautiful day to connect with other adoptive families and children, but it's a nice opportunity to have your yearly visit. And for you guys, that was the first time, I believe, that you met with her post-hospital. So talk to us about that experience.
Yeah, that's happened approximately 3 months after the birth of our son. And it felt in a way exciting, but also nerve-wracking because this was the first time outside of the hospital setting that we would be meeting with the birth mom for a second time. But I think once you start thinking about what are the reasons that are holding you back from being yourself, it might be the same reason that any other person is experiencing. So I think you just go into it knowing that you can do so much to involve the person in the conversation and make them experience what you're experiencing. And if there's uncertainty about what to say and what to do, we just asked her, would you like to hold him? Or is there anything you would like to know how he's been doing so far? And I think once you open up with those kinds of questions, because we are as equally unequipped with some, because this is the first experience for us with some of these first steps. And in the same way, she is equally unequipped with some of these first steps because it's the first moment for everyone. Having AFTH staff, games for kids, and she brought her other child at the picnic, I think that was a really nice medium to facilitate some of these conversations, and that really helped our experience.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, like, I didn't want to stay the whole time. I just kind of kept walking past you guys and checking in on you because there is some level of, like, you have to kind of figure it out, like you're saying, and navigate some of these moments because both sides don't necessarily know when to push, when to pull back. But you guys did such a great job, and I just felt like you truly embraced what we talk about in preparing for open adoption. And I felt like you were very vulnerable and honest, and both sides were able to just kind of get to know each other a little bit more outside of the hospital. And your open adoption relationship is really starting to bloom naturally. I was grateful that she brought the child that she's parenting so that you could also kind of embark on that layer, right? Because openness is not just about birth parents, but other folks that may be involved in the birth parents' lives. And it was just a really beautiful moment. And the fact that you drove all that way 3 months into being placed with a little one, there could have been so many excuses and you made none of them. You knew how important it was for your son's birth mom to see him, to see you, for him to see her. And I think that's a really important piece. And I hope you guys know that that shows a lot about who you are and what type of parents you are and are going to continue to be for your son. Full picture of just kind of your journey, where you're at. Remember what it was like to be in the initial processing at Adoptions from the Heart. Any advice you have for families with just the process and giving them hope of kind of what this journey is going to look like?
I think it's true what you hear in just trusting the process. Once you've made the decision to be in the wait, trust yourself, trust your decision, even the little micro decisions you made to get there. Keep in touch with the support people in your life, because it is hard, and sometimes you don't know how hard it is until you talk to someone about how you're feeling in the wait. Post match and placement, and now I think I can speak for both of us when I say we do feel like this was the match that was waiting for us all that time. It really does feel that way. It's not just a platitude. I think parenting, is fun. It's really exciting. It's exhausting, but in all of the right ways.
And I think for me, a couple of things stand out. One, stay the course, and two, trust your intuitions. And I think staying the course is important because there'll be many ups and downs in this process. I think I need to go back and check how many times we received a situation from AFTH. I don't think I'm exaggerating, but we had about 24 situations. And each one of those situations required anything from responding within 60 minutes to a couple of days. And we're in different places in our lives on a day-to-day basis. And when we were forced to make a life decision in a way and kind of set it aside, that's what we did. We invested a lot emotionally with every single situation, but we also realized that we may or may not get it. So staying the course when disappointments happen, or at least when things don't work out in a way that you would want them to work out, you just kind of move on. So I think that would be an important step in the process, just stay the course, because I think the two of us went into this process a little bit thinking that, well, it's going to take maybe 4 to 6 weeks. That's how it turned out for our two closest couple families who, through AFTH, expanded their families in just a month and a half. So that was kind of maybe going into this process for us, thinking, oh, it's going to happen quickly. But even I think allowing yourself a couple of years, I think it's a good benchmark to know that we also change during that process as individuals, and our preferences and desires change as well. But what doesn't change is the course that you are on, which is to become a parent. So that's kind of one big part of it. And the second one is just recognizing that your decisions ultimately a part of a larger universe of decisions of many people and forces that are sort of inexplicable, and they just happen in ways that they're supposed to happen. And we're not really in the driver's seat, and somebody, or at least forces are in that driver's seat. So just kind of try to stay the course and trust your intuition that eventually it will work out in a way that it's supposed to work out.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you guys sharing your story. I think it's really valuable for people to hear it from folks who have been in it. We can sit and talk all day long as social workers, but I think until you're actually in it and able to really put out there the feelings and what goes on, it's hard to explain. So we appreciate folks who are willing to jump on these calls and share their stories, and we're hopeful that it can help other people. I'm happy to see you guys happy. I'm happy to hear you say we now realize this was the situation meant for us, because I feel like we said that several times throughout our journey together, and truly it makes me happy to see you guys be living it. You have been a pleasure to know, and I am really happy for your family, and we look forward to watching your son grow up over the years and seeing your relationship bloom with your birth parent to your son.
Thank you so much, Amanda.
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. And thanks to everybody at the agency, too.
Well, thank you guys so much. Continue to tune in to future episodes.